great, Randy. How about yourself?
Doing great. We're headed into the Christmas season. Midwest is not too far out, and here we are with Coffee Talk again on Tuesday morning. And I want to thank Beth, our operations manager, and we've got some very special guests with us today, and we're so honored that they're taking their time this morning to share some of their stories with us. We have with us from Texas several band directors. They happen to be their individual class champions. First, Rebekah Cook from Menard High School, which is the 1A champion for UIL this year. Katie VanDoren from Vandergrift High School, which is the 6A state champion this year. Chris Yee from Cedar Park, who is the 5A state champion. And Mr. Charles Gardner from Whitesboro, who is the 3A state champion. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for sharing your time with us. Richard, I know when you and I talked about this segment, we really wanted to make sure that we just kind of gave directors an opportunity who've been pursuing, excellence like these directors have, to just kind of share a little bit of their story so that people understand there is process involved. There are things that you have to do regardless. And since we're dealing with schools of different sizes, I'm sure the challenges are different at each school. But these fine directors have great processes in place, and that's what we kind of want to talk about today. So, Richard, I'm going to let you start it off.
Thanks, Randy. Chris, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay. I've been fortunate enough to see, I think, all of your bands this fall, and they were all just amazing. So, Chris, it being in Texas, and I've been down there for a lot of competitions. Obviously, I've never taught there, but it seems to me that there's got to be just unbelievable pressure on you guys down there just to keep up with the Joneses. You know what I'm saying? How do you deal with all that?
Oh, well, you hit the nail on the head. There sure is a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure from our incredible peers. There's a lot of pressure, more specifically at our campus, of the past. I am very fortunate and very blessed to lead the staff and students at Cedar Park, but I can take no credit for all of the amazing things that have been happening here for over 25 years. I think we handle the pressure of the past and of our peers by being thankful and grateful for what we do have, clinging to what we know has worked for the students in the past and adhering to those systems and processes, meeting the challenges of the time. Every band is different. Every season is different. Every production that we put on the field is different and requires different things of us and of the students. So we have to be really purposeful about listening to what's needed in that given time. And I think we handle pressure by operating and living within our own bubble. I enjoy everybody's marching show after the season ends. And I can honestly say that I didn't see anybody's or hear anybody's productions really, unless our band was waiting to perform. I didn't hear or see a show. My job is to look after our students and their endeavor, and I focus on that, and so does the rest of the band staff, and we encourage the students to do so as well. And we honor and appreciate other shows after the season has ended. So we try to kind of, in many ways, shut ourselves off and focus on us and make sure that we're doing what we can do to bring our music and our marching to life.
Well, very well said. And you're very humble, but you've done a tremendous job. And I think your outlook is right on, just focusing on where you are, what you need to do with your kids, and then we can watch all the other shows later. But I'll tell you what, folks, I think Randy, if I was teaching down there, I think I'd be crying most days, just trying to figure out how to keep up. I'll turn it back over to you. Chris, thank you.
Well, you and I cried when we taught here in Indianapolis anyway.
That's true. That's true.
Bunch of criers.
Especially when your band beat mine all the time. I cried a lot.
Right.
But, yeah.
Right. So I had the opportunity, let's go to Rebekah. I had the opportunity, Rebekah, to see your fine group in 1A prelims this year at UIL. And one of the things that really kind of sat with me about your group was that they were musical, that you didn't try to do things that the group wasn't capable of doing. Talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about that process for you.
Well, these kids 2 years ago won the state championship also. And so the previous director definitely paved the way. This is my first year here. She paved the way, and so they already had the knowledge and the experience of how to perform and what to do. So for me, it was definitely just fine-tuning some things and being able to say, hey, okay, we're not sounding our best. What is our best sound? How can we get that back? Especially because we had some new 7th and 8th graders join us, some kids who have never played before. And so how do we fit everybody into the ensemble and match what we have, what they've accomplished in the past? And so it was definitely lots of fine tuning and focusing on every chord to be able to really get the music to life.
So what you're saying is detail and process matters.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so especially with a smaller group, because every kid counts. I mean, nobody can hide. So how did you, especially because we have a lot of, Richard, I think we have a lot of bands in Indiana, especially smaller schools that probably march some 7th and 8th graders. Rebekah, how do you handle getting them ingrained into that ensemble process? I mean, just give us a couple of short, tidbits.
Yeah, I think it's just constantly repeating myself over and over and over again. They're junior high kids, and they just don't remember anything. And so it's just constant repetition of the same things over and over again. Okay, this set to this set. Okay, fine. We get it one time. Can we do it 10 more times? So just constant repetition and reminders. And I don't think there's ever a second that I'm not saying something over the loudspeaker. Just constantly giving them reminders and repeating myself.
That's great. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Richard?
Yeah, I'm going to go to Katie next. Charles, we're not just purposely saving you for last, I promise. But Katie, I had the great pleasure of judging your group this fall in San Antonio. And I probably made a fool of myself a couple of times because I was blown away by the resonance that your winds got when they released notes. And I think I was talking about some of the difficulty of what you're doing, but all of a sudden I just had to stop and listen for a second because it was just such an amazing resonance when they cut off. And I know it's not a simple answer, but how do you talk with them about releasing notes? It just seemed magical to me, the way you guys play at the end of phrases.
Well, as everyone knows here, it takes everybody and everyone has to commit to it. And it's something we start training pretty much right away, right in July when we start with the group and getting them to all commit to going all the way to count one and not feeling foolish to maybe go too long. And it's something that we try to get every single kid to really deliver that last moment. We do a breath release like everyone else, just the technical, how do you do it? But I'd say the mentality of the group is probably what helps deliver that towards the end of the year, and that it really does take every single person to truly deliver all those musical moments.
Well, they had to be in amazing shape too, because they would be running everywhere and then stop and sound beautiful first, and I didn't know how they did it. So obviously you have a great training plan in place, and I just wanted to say that, I was blown away really by the sound of the band. I just thought they sounded amazing. And do you maybe give our directors that are watching, what are a couple of basic exercises that you do with your winds that you think really makes a difference?
We don't do much. Just if we're talking fundamentals, we play a lot of concert F. I know it's the standard Texas, what everyone thinks that we do all the time. That's what we do. Great. I kind of what Rebekah said, it's just repetition. Our kids are in shape, but we don't do anything crazy. I think some people would be pretty shocked by what we actually do here. It's just getting every kid to do it as many times as possible with as much information as possible. So by the time we get to November, they are in shape and ready to play.
Love it. So I think you would definitely agree with Mike Poteneye's philosophy that it's the simpler things done better is going to get you a lot farther. Thanks so much, yes. Katie. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm just curious, how many of you would say that you think your students with the knowledge that you've given them, if they just were able to run their own rehearsal, could probably get better in a day just because of the reps. I mean, would most of you agree to that? Yeah, I think a lot of times, we younger teachers sometimes get into a habit of talking too much and they don't allow the reps to take place, and those start multiplying, right? So all of you have mentioned that. So, all right, well, let's move on to Charles. Charles is from Whitesboro. Charles, talk to us about your journey this year and some takeaways.
Sure. Well, this is my 7th year here, and I kind of took over an already successful program. And so I kind of wanted to, that was my motivation, is to keep that going. And then also just started to really care about these kids. And so when we got to where we were getting more consistent with kind of what our identity was, they kind of took along with that. The kids really bought into it. And so I think last year we had, and this year we had a younger group. And so last year, I don't remember if I even told the kids this or not, but last year was kind of band camp part 1, and this was band camp part 2. And so we had kind of the 2-year process in mind leading up to this year. And it still started out, I feel like it started out a little bit young sounding. But like everyone else said, it's the reps, we call it Rep City. And so that's where we are. We're in Rep City, and we're just going to do it again. And I think the thing about doing it over and over again is really good, but we also don't let them get away with doing anything wrong in a rep. And so one of my teachers in college said, make sure that the good reps outnumber the bad reps. And so, if there's a bad release, we stop and we make sure they know that was a bad release. And we go and we do it, and we don't go on until it's corrected. And so I think it can be easy. I know I have before, to not ignore things, but hear something and don't address it right away because you feel like you don't have time. But those simple things of starts and releases are so important that you have to take the time to do it. And so that's kind of where we started out. And then once the show kept going, the kids just bought into the show really well. They loved it, and I think that's a big deal. And I let the guys that are smarter than me design the show. I just make sure that whatever they give me, I can look at that and be like, okay, the kids are going to like that. They're going to enjoy that uniform. They're going to want to wear it. They're not going to feel silly. And that's depends on where you are. I mean, up here, these kids are, they're, a lot of them are farm kids, or, we're out in the country. And so getting them to do some dancing is like kind of foreign to them. And so we have to approach that, a certain way. to where that they can trust, like, we're going to do something that's going to give you a great experience. And so that's kind of my philosophy, is if the kids love it and they're enjoying it, they're going to buy in and they're going to trust me, and I can take them where I need them to go.
That's great. So that relationship building is probably the first priority, it sounds like, and that's one of the reasons why you're having the success there. That's great. So I'm going to ask one overreaching question for any of you, or any of you can answer it, and then Richard, I'll give you one more, and then we'll let these folks get back to their real jobs. So did you face a challenge this year that forced you to figure out a different way to solve either some sort of instructional problem, where a kid just wasn't getting it? You had to find a new tool for your tool chest to help them. And if you did, can you describe what it was? Anybody?
I'll jump in. For us this year, it was the heat. It was really hot in Texas for all of our schools, the teachers here on the call. And it was a different brand of heat that we're not used to. So I found myself communicating with a band director in Arizona, just asking them, what do you do? How do you keep these kids focused? Because I completely agree with Charles. You can't let reps get by with students not doing what it is that you're asking them to do. But if they're too busy focusing on their pain and the excessive nature of the temperature, not a lot is going to stick. And like Rebekah said, they tend to forget a lot, without a ton of repetition, but you don't want to turn into that teacher that just turns into wah, 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 wah. So we brought out a water cow, and filled it with ice water, and we took extra breaks, and the kids were able to wet towels and their baseball caps. We took longer extended shade breaks, something that we had never done at Cedar Park before, where we gave them time to sit down and decompress and get out of the sun for a little bit. We rehearsed in smaller chunks, and sewed them together a little more purposefully than usual. But yeah, we definitely stepped out of our way to tackle the heat. That was certainly a challenge of the 2023 season.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Anybody else?
We had one. I'm sure everyone felt this a little bit, but these are the students who started on Zoom for us, and I guess it didn't really occur to me that their processing speed might be a little bit different when it came to marching band. We move really fast here, and just the way we rehearse, the speed at which we rehearse, how fast we learn different elements of marching band. And it was something that we kind of hit mid-August, and I was like, oh, we are not where we normally are. And, you know, we kind of pushed our way through the beginning of school. And once we hit September, we had to, as a staff, slow down a little bit, which was new. We don't typically do that. And we weren't reteaching, but we were kind of like Chris was saying, moving in smaller chunks. We use our class time a little bit differently, more splits. And in a lot of ways had to teach the kids how to process instructions, because it wasn't that they couldn't do it, it's that they weren't able to do all the things you have to do in marching band at the same time at the speed we're used to doing it. So we did have to, as a team, look at how fast we were teaching and look at our timeline and make some adjustments so that they could stay caught up, especially our freshmen. But then we hit October and they were back on, but our initial, I should say, the ramp, the trajectory we were on, we did have to adjust a little bit just because they weren't processing at the same speed that we were used to.
Makes great sense. Awesome. Anybody else?
Yeah, I really agree with that. When she started talking about kind of that part of the season, I had a little bit of like, I panicked a little bit on the inside because we did the same thing. And I was like, why did they not know how this goes, or how are we not able? And it's like, okay, we just need to explain it and just take our time. And so we moved a lot slower as well. And I think another kind of defining moment for us this year, and it could just be where I am in teaching in general, but we were not afraid to make changes. And we made a lot of changes, especially early on. It's like this isn't working very well. And at the end of the day, the kids are stressed out because we're asking them to do something that they're not comfortable doing, and it's not going to be, you know, clean or good until the reps are in and they're tired, we're tired, and why not just change it? And so we did a lot of changes this year to make sure that what they were doing was comfortable and they were enjoying it.
That's great. Rebekah.
Yeah, I think I have to, yeah, I'll go along with that too. Well, we just, a lot of the challenges and changing, I felt like we were always changing something. Being at a 1A school, our kids are involved in everything. So they're playing football, they're cheering, they're running cross country. And so it's just a lot of hours that they're putting into so many different things. And the beginning of the year, well, throughout the season, kids were tearing their ACL, breaking a collarbone, having gallbladder surgery, a dislocated shoulder the weekend right before we were going to state. So she didn't even get to perform. A concussion. So even we had changes up until 2 weeks before state, where I had a kid who had gallbladder surgery and she played the clarinet. So we ended up moving her to brake drum because you still want to incorporate the kids and have them perform. And my brake drum kid ended up getting hurt and wasn't even there. So just inputting all of these kids in different places. I had a couple of trumpet players learn 3 different spots just because one was out with an ACL tear. I had a trumpet player join late, and then another trumpet player who was a 7th grader who just wasn't quite, as a 7th grader learning to march for the first time, struggling a little bit. So we're all just kind of plugging these kids in all these different places, and so they definitely overcame a lot this year and learned so many different things as injuries were occurring. So definitely lots of changes throughout the season.
That's great sharing. And you know, one of the common threads to me here, Richard, is that they're talking about the students first, and they're adapting the instruction, and they're caring about the student relationships. And I think that's one of the strongest messages, hopefully, that comes across to our listeners. Richard, what do you got? We'll wrap it up.
Well, I've got this beeping sound on my computer is what I've got. So I don't want to drive you guys crazy with that.
I can't hear it. I can't hear it anyway.
Okay, well, that's good because it's driving me nuts. No, but I just want to say congratulations again to everyone, and thanks for taking the time to join us. We appreciate you all so much, and we respect what you do, and can't wait to see your groups next year.
Yep. Thanks so much for sharing. And we hope you all have great holidays when you get there in a couple of weeks with your families.